Welcome to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week from Yes is Geoff Down. The band recently lost founding member Chris Squire, so we do talk about that. My co-host this week is Adam Hamilton, formerly of LA Guns and the CC DeVille experiment, right? Or experience?
Yeah, experiment.
Yeah, but it must have been an experience as well, right?
It was an experience and an experiment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in LA Guns, you got to play bass. Uh, did you take anything from Chris Squire in terms of, were you a fan of his? Did
Oh
you study
yeah,
him?
man.
Okay.
Chris, absolutely. I discovered Yes a little bit later, but God, he was amazing, man. I still use some of his tricks in the studio of using a Marshall amp instead of a bass amp. Miking that up. He was a master. So amazing. So amazing guy, amazing sound, amazing writer. He was incredible.
Yeah, it's a shame when we see our heroes pass away, but the band has decided to move forward in
Yeah.
his honor. They've hired
Yeah.
a new bassman, which in fact, you know the new guy, or
Yeah, Billy Sherwood. He was actually played guitar with him when Trevor left years ago. So he's been in the Yes camp and family for years. He's a super talented musician, producer, and he actually talked to Chris before he found out Chris was sick, and Chris had said, I'm thinking about maybe not going to be able to tour. I've been having health issues, and I wanted to talk to you about doing the tour. And it turned out he passed away within those six weeks after that, and I'm glad they're continuing forward in his honor. That's great. I can't think of anybody better to do it than Billy in the gig.
Yeah, I am glad they're going on, and of course the tour is with Toto, and it runs through the middle of September, and then after that, they are going to come back to our shores and do this cruise to the edge. That is going to head to the Caribbean, and they've got the Neil Morse Band on there. They've got Mike Portnoy, and of course Marillion, one of those sort of Grateful Deadish kind of bands that have this die hard following. I mean, they just came to Montreal and did these 3 days of almost like a Star Trek convention where fans from all over the world fly in, and it's just an incredible thing. And yet, a lot of people don't know who Marillion is, right?
Yeah.
It's something. In terms of Geoff Downs himself, he, of course, has this other band that you may have heard of called Asia, right? Little band out of nowhere that people might have heard of. Are you an Asia fan at all, or did you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that first record was amazing. Not a bad song on it. I loved everybody in the band. Carl Palmer as a drummer was one of my drumming influences, and obviously everybody in the band was an incredible player. They're fantastic.
Yeah, what's amazing about Geoff is that he can be in a band like Asia and put out albums, and they even put one out in 2014 called Gravitas, and then as a hobby he just plays in a band called Yes, and they've also released albums up until last year. And you've been in band situations, and just being in LA Guns and stuff, it's hard enough to try to make a living and get out there. And here they are, two bands, right?
Yeah. Well, like you said earlier, we were talking about even three bands. In the 80s, you had the Bugle with Trevor Horn.
Yep.
They had a huge hit, Video Killed the Radio Star.
First video on MTV, launched the 80s thing.
First video that MTV ever played, right? I think so in America.
Yeah, and it's funny. The one thing about that song, I was like in grade 7 when it came out, and it would play on the radio all the time. And my dad, for some reason, had a bugaboo about it. I think because they said "killed" in it, it would come on and goes, "I don't want you to listen to that song, kill."
Exactly.
And it was just like, wow, that's sort of silly because it's a song. I mean, I'm not, I'm not a psychopath here. And they never banned anything else in my life, but my dad had a bugaboo about that one song. My mom, on the other hand, really hated "I Don't Like Mondays" by the Boomtown Rats because it talked about a school shooting. So she wouldn't let me listen to that one, but Video Killed a Radio. So I mean, Geoff Downs, just getting back to the positive about it all, Video Killed a Radio Star, Heat of the Moment. You can't even name all the Yes hits because there's just too many. We'd be here for the next 45 minutes. Um, you look at me doing the podcast, at you trying with LA Guns, and all, just doing one thing is hard enough. And here's Jeff like, man, let's just do three, not a problem.
Yeah, three successful careers in music, pretty much. Hit after hit, on to the next one, hit after hit, on to the next one, hit after hit.
Yeah.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
It's interesting you point that out. I'd like to find out other musicians in history who've been that successful in three or more bands. I mean, now I'm going to have to go do some Google research. Now you've got me interested.
Now I got you. Yeah, and it's funny. And I asked him during the interview. I say, when you're writing a song, do you have sort of a yes pile and a Asia pile and a whatever? He's like, no. When it's time to work on yes, I just write some yes songs, and when I'm done and I go work on Asia, I write some Asia songs. What's the problem there? Like it's not even.
Must be nice being a musical genius. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's almost as if he's like, what? You can't do that, Mitch? Wait, what's wrong with you? And it's like, no, you don't understand. This is unique. This is a talent. But hey, that is good old Geoff Downes. Great
Wow.
musician. And the other thing, by the way, other than the three bands, is the longevity. It's not like he's done three bands in like 2013, 2014, 2015, and I'm still sort of fresh and happening. You're looking at 35, 40, 45 years of career, and just brilliantly successful.
That's amazing. That's an amazing thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we listen to Mr. Downes, and then we'll come back and wrap this episode up. Here
Fantastic.
is Geoff Downes. Jeff, always a pleasure to talk to you. So much going on. You've got the Yes and Toto tour coming up. You've got the cruise to the edge. What motivates you to get out there and get on the road?
Obviously, we're all very saddened by the, what happened with Chris.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something that has been very, very hard to take on board. But I think that we knew that he wasn't going to do this tour and probably the cruise, but I don't think anyone was expecting a situation where he would pass so quickly after his initial diagnosis of quite a very serious illness.
Mm-hmm. And I have a hard time, when somebody's passed away. But was it difficult to decide to continue?
In some respects, I think that we'd already braced ourselves for the fact that he wasn't going to be doing the summer tour with Toto, and he actually suggested that Billy Sherwood took his place.
Right.
On the understanding that should he make a full recovery, which was fully expected, that albeit a very serious illness that he had, that we would actually go out anyway and fulfill the obligations that the band had made to do the tour with Toto, and obviously the cruise as well. But, as things took a different, downward turn in that respect, and, I think we were still committed to do that. But obviously it's going to be very difficult for everybody, but at the same time, I think that, we feel responsible to pay due respect to Chris's legacy as much as anything else. And also the fact that I think that Chris has said on many interviews that he felt that, Yes should continue whatever, and the music of Yes should be performed by a band called Yes. And I think that's, we have our mindset on that we are going to carry on for the foreseeable future.
What is his legacy on music?
I think if you look at the fact that he was there from the very beginning, and you go through all the different eras of Yes, of which I had a spell in the 80s, and then the band completely regrouped in 83 and put out the 90125 album, which again was a completely different spin on the stuff that they'd done back in in the 70s. But I think what Chris always brought to the picture was, the bass playing was the bass parts were an unbelievable thing that the music pivoted on, and that sort of happened really throughout the whole period of Yes, for the 45 years virtually that it's been going. That Chris was always there as the mainstay, adding not just his bass playing, but his vocals as well were an integral part of the music, particularly his sound of his voice with John Anderson were very, very, very important part of Yes's music. So, it's obviously a great loss to everybody involved with the band, but at the same time, as I say, that is his legacy. He wrote all that great music and performed it, and I think that it's important that does continue.
Yeah, I fully agree. And what I found remarkable after his passing was the tributes being paid on Facebook and Twitter and social media. And it wasn't just bands that are in a similar genre. There were heavy metal artists, jazz artists, pop artists. His influence was so wide-ranging.
Absolutely. I think that people like Steve Stevens, from the guys of Billy Idol, and all kinds of different people, the Foo Fighters. He obviously had a profound effect on a lot of musicians, as you say, from all these genres, and it just shows really what a remarkable musician he was, to be able to influence generations, not just bass players, but his sense of harmony and the fact that Yes really is a completely original band with that doesn't really sound like any other band. It was completely it was a complete one-off, and I think that he created that. Or certainly with the help of the original members, and it's continued through various guises. He's always been there as the captain at the helm, and I think it's going to be, as I say, it's going to be part of us is saying that it's going to be difficult because we know that he had such an integral part of it, but at the same time, we've had so much support from the fans and musicians alike to say, well, he was such a great player and such a big influence. We're quite grateful that we're still going out there and doing it.
Yeah, and I actually want to ask you about that. The last album you made, Heaven and Earth, which came out last year, produced by Roy Thomas Baker. What motivates you to go in and make new music? Because listen, on your Yes and Toto tour, you could pick 15 songs from the back catalog, no problem. Fans would show up anyway.
Yeah, I mean it's very difficult because Yes's catalog, not just latterly or the last few years we've been focusing quite heavily on the albums from the 70s, but if you dig deeper, there's 21 studio albums, and I think that when we made the Heaven and Earth album, I think it's important for a band like Yes not just to resurrect the old stuff, but also to try and challenge itself and make new music. And I think that that was always one of Chris's adages about the band going forward, was that it's very important to keep adding new music to what you do.
Yeah, and at the same time, your other band, Asia, released Gravitas last year. How do you decide what material you write goes towards Gravitas, what goes towards Heaven and Earth? What is Yes material and what's Asia material to you?
Well, I think it comes about when I sit down with the various co-writers, and I think when I sit down with John Wetton and write Asia songs, we have a very, very close understanding because, our writing partnership goes back to the early 80s, and, we've continued to do that throughout, to write music together throughout. So we have a kind of understanding of what we think will work for Asia, and that's how it comes out when we get together and start writing songs. But in terms of Yes, I think the same thing applied when I sat down and I was writing with Chris and Alan in Phoenix just before we went in and did the sessions with Roy, and also spent some time with John Davison. You kind of get things, you get more focused on the brief in hand when you're working with the people that are going to be making the music.
Yeah, absolutely. In the early 80s, with one of your other bands, you proclaimed that video killed the radio star. These days, people are talking about rock is dead, rock is dead. Is rock dead, and if so, what killed it?
When people put songs on the radio, apart from the sort of the current stations, I think if you want that, I Want to Know What Love Is by Foreigner,
Right.
or Journey song or something like that. I think that that era of rock music, particularly in the late 70s and 80s to the end of the 80s, garnered an enormous amount of evergreen songs that kind of became buried into people's psyche. And I think that, something like Video Killed the Radio Star, for instance, it still gets played today. It's still, obviously, it was the first video on MTV, so that has some kind of weight to it. But I think that era of songwriting was very, very important. And I think that, a lot of rock music was written in that period, or a lot of rock songs were written in that period. I think they still have run the test of time.
Yeah, that song is, you look at all the songs that you've been a part of, that Heat of the Moment and all. What is the best song you've written? Or have you not written your best song yet?
I don't know. You always kind of think that you've got one more in you, and I think that I think if I didn't think that, I probably wouldn't be doing what I do. So I always believe that there is, if you've managed to do it once, you can do it again. I think that it's not the be all and end all. I think some of the music that I've written over the years that maybe has not received commercial accolades is some of the best stuff that I've done. But it's for other people to decide, really. And then in hindsight, they say, "Well, that was an amazing song. How did you come up with that?" And really, there's no difference from just about every song that certainly I write. Say, for instance, with John Wetton, or the songs that I wrote with Trevor Horn. There's no kind of formula. We just kind of wrote what we thought was the best thing to write at the time. And, as I say, if it becomes hugely commercially successful, as did Video and Heat at the Moment, then so be it. But, it's not really the driving factor. The driving factor, I think, is to continue to make new music and continue to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the ultimate thing, really, is that, I think that, as sad as we are going to be going out without Chris on this tour, we will go out and we'll try and give as good account of the band as we can, and enjoy playing to the people, because I think that's ultimately what it's all about, being a musician.
Now, after you're done with the Toto tour, you're heading out on the Cruise to the Edge cruise with Marillion. Tell me about that experience. I mean, it's your third one. You're stuck on a boat with these diehard fans. Does it get intimidating at any point, or is it just the most pleasurable experience?
In a way, it's the first cruise was a bit strange. A, because it was the first one, and B, because the weather was really bad. Mm-hmm. So we were kind of playing when the stage was moving. That was kind of weird. But I mean, generally speaking, I think there are about 25 bands all prog bands on this tour. And I think that on this cruise, rather,
right.
And I think that they, the fans that come are quite happy to see lots of different types of music, not just not just Marillion, to see a whole range of different kinds of music, and people just go to have a good time, and I think that's the key thing. Is not, they're not there to bug you, they're not there to get in your face, but obviously, people will bring their CDs or albums that they want signed, and they'll take it from there. But generally speaking, it's been a pleasant experience.
And I'll ask you a couple more questions, because I see we're running out of time. The last album of Yes was done by Roy Thomas Baker. The man, I mean, he's a genius. He's worked with everybody. Just tell me a little bit about working with him, because you just look at his discography: The Cars, Foreigner, Alice Cooper, Queen, Journey. Unbelievable. How was it working with him?
I got on with him really, really well, because I think that he's from a very kind of old school engineer, producer field, from British style, and I think that I got a lot from when Mike Stone, the late Mike Stone, did the early Asia albums. He was actually Roy's key engineer during the whole of the Queen period. So I could sort of saw a lot of Mike Stone in Roy Thomas Baker, and it's just a real, a very British sense of humour, very precise with what he did, understanding British people. I mean, I know he's worked with he's worked with all sorts of people,
Yep.
but it was a real pleasure to work with him, and I think that he had that real old school approach, which I think, in hindsight was probably, a good thing for the album.
Yeah, I really think so. The last studio album was Heaven and Earth. The last live album is Like It Is, Yes, at the Mesa Arts Center. Where does Yes go from here? After the tour's done, after the cruise is done, another album, or do you wait a couple of years? Where do we go from here?
Well, we have a European tour booked next year, which was, again was booked or put in the diary before Chris got sick, and I think that again, we're going to take it bit by bit. I don't think we can say Yes is planning this, that, and the other for the next 2 or 3 years. I think that we need to see that the band is gelling. Obviously, Billy has a huge job on his hands, taking over from taking Chris's place, and we'll really just have to see how it all gels. That we have a band that's capable of going forward and capable of making new music. Those are the key things that we want to hopefully will come to fruition.
Yeah, and then the last thing, Asia had Gravitas in 2014. Where do you see yourself going in the future with Asia? Is there another studio album, a tour? Where are we going?
Well, I think that John was very sick as well a few months ago, and he had a serious operation, which he's recuperating from, thankfully. But we're concentrating probably on writing some new material for a new Asia album sometime next year, and hopefully we'll carry on really where we left off on Gravitas. But as I say, it's one of those things where we're just getting our head writing some. In fact, we've been writing the last few weeks. We've been writing some new songs together, and with Asia in mind. So with a bit of luck, we'll be back up and running next year sometime.
Oh, I certainly wish it for you. You've done work with other bands and stuff. Is there anything outside of Yes in Asia that you might be doing in the next little bit?
Well, I've been working with the last few years. I've been working with the songwriter Chris Wade, who is better known for his writing with people like for Britney Spears and real mainstream stuff, and Christina Aguilera and Paloma Faith and Sia Fula. So he's kind of written, he's more of a songwriter, but he's actually a very, very talented guy. And it's been quite inspirational. We did a project album a couple of years ago, so I may well be looking at doing another one with him at some point because, as I say, he's an extraordinarily gifted writer, a very inspirational guy to work with.
Yeah, it sounds great. So just thank you for your time today. Thank you for all the great music over the years. I mean, those songs run through my head, and they've been running through my head for 35 years now. Great pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, nice to speak to you too, and come and see us when we're in town.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Bye now.
Okay, yeah, bye now. Thank you.
There you have it, folks. My interview with Geoff Downes of Yes and Asia and the Buggles and probably 500 other bands that he could probably front and bring towards success. Cruise to the Edge, by the way, heading to the Caribbean. Yes, Marillion and a bunch of other bands, Spock's Beards, for example. Adam, wouldn't you want to be on that? Wouldn't you love to just be on a boat with Yes for an entire weekend?
Oh, that sounds fantastic. When do we go?
Yeah, well, hey, tell you what, I know exactly. It is November 15th to 19th. I think that's great. I like these idea of cruises where you get a whole bunch of rock stars, there's the ones, Monsters of Rock, there's a whole bunch of them, and you just get music and sun and fun. You can't beat that, I don't think.
Seems to be the new thing for sure.
It really is. Why just go to a club when you can go to a boat?
In the Caribbean.
In the Caribbean, yeah, that sounds a little more appealing. Yes and Toto, of course, currently on tour. New Asia, new Yes albums coming down the pike soon. Adam, always a pleasure. Last time we spoke about this band that you were working with I think a 16-year-old girl who's still in high school.
Yeah, Micah.
Yeah,
They're
how
awesome.
is that coming along?
It's great. They're on tour right now going into the fall. They're going up on the East Coast, and then we're going to get back in the studio and we're going to start doing pre-production on single number 2 and see what happens. But they are awesome. They're inspiring. They come in and they look like rock stars, and they plug in and they play so great. And one of them is still in high school. I mean, little singer Devin Micah is just like such a great songwriter. They're just awesome, man. They're one of the few young bands that I really am inspired by because they're the real deal. You know, they didn't grow up learning how to do everything in Pro Tools, and they just know how to play great. They don't even know how to run Pro Tools. They're kind of old school. I love it.
Do they have a Facebook or a website or anything people can go check out?
Oh yeah, you can find them. Micah Band, I think maybe they're on Twitter. They're on Facebook. MYCAH, Devin Micah, and Lexi Lynn Frazier are the guitar. It's Devin and Lexi are the singer and guitar player, and hit them up on Facebook and say hi and check out their stuff. They're amazing.
Oh, very much looking forward to checking that out. And of course, check out the cruise, check out Yes and Toto on tour. Adam, always a pleasure. Where do we find you? We find you at what? It's Adam. Hold on, you've got a whole bunch of numbers on your Facebook page, right?
Yeah, Adam Hamilton 111169, and you can find me at Adam Hamilton 1 on Twitter. I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook. Just hit Adam Hamilton.
There you go. And you can find me on Twitter at Mitch Lafon. Same thing for Periscope, Instagram. My Facebook page is facebook.com Mitch Lafon, and also the One-on-One with Mitch Lafon Facebook page. In fact, just Google Mitch Lafon and you can pretty much find all kinds of interesting stuff. That's in fact how I spend my evenings, just Googling myself. It's fascinating. That's when my wife wants to talk to me. I just go, just Google me.
You find everything you need to know.
Yeah. She goes, honey, what time are you home? I go, Google it. It's easier. It's easier that way. There you go. Always a pleasure.
You too.
Loved
Mitch.
having
Thanks,
you
man.
on the Dead Daisies episode and the other episode we did together. Fun. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Mitch.
Absolutely. And there you go, folks. Cheers.